Hello, my name is Samuel Kuferili, and I want to walk you through in this very short video how I implemented the solution of creating an API for an inventory management system that allows an employee to manage inventory and also the supplier. So the first thing I did for every application that I build is to try to bring out the core functionalities of the business requirement. So the first thing I did in this particular stage was to first of all list out the core functionalities that I must be able to achieve after building this particular project. So as listed in the business requirement, the employee should be able to add new items, view existing items, update, and also be able to remove items for the inventory. Then when it comes to the supplier management, the employee should also be able to add new suppliers, add suppliers to items, and then update supplier information like contact information and all the rest. Then the relationship between these two should be that an item can have more than one supplier. So for a specific item, you can have more than one supplier um, actually supplying that particular item to the business. And then the supplier can also supply multiple items. So a supplier can supply um, cheese, can also supply meat, can also supply any other stuff like that. So the system should be able to allow the supplier to be able to create an account and be able to also see all the items that the supplier supplies to the business. And then a user should be able to view specific supplier information and then also see the item that the supplier is also supplying to the business. So those are like the core business requirements. And the inventory and supplier data should be able to be accessible in a format compatible with systems like web frontend and mobile application. So in this particular instance, the best data format that actually meets this requirement is a JSON data format. So this application will be using JSON throughout when adding, updating, or making data available for other people to use. So we'll stick with JSON to be able to do that. So after understanding this business requirement, the next thing for me to do was to create a model or a database that actually embodies these particular features and allows us to do this very clearly. So how do I go about doing this? The first thing I did was to be able to create tables that models all the information that this particular project will be having. So the first table that I created was the item table, which first of all it holds or it has fields that describe basic item features like we mentioned in the business requirement. So the item will have an ID, which is obviously a primary key. It will have a name, which describes the project, and then it will also have a detailed description. Then we also have a price for that particular item. We have the quantity, we have the information of the supplier for that particular item, and the date that it was added. Now let me give a little context to this particular field that the item has. So first of all, I decided to make sure that the quantity field in the item is read only. So this will allow the system to automatically add to the quantity. What this means is that when we get the item that has been supplied by the supplier, we will take the quantity of item that is given by each of the supplier to update the quantity field in the item. What this allows us to do is that we'll have a persistent state. What it means is that the item table cannot, the quantity of the item cannot be higher than the amount that the total suppliers or a particular supplier has actually given to the inventory system. So I felt this was really reasonable to make us build a system that will be trusted to always give a reliable information. Now, the next field that I wanted to explain there is the supplier field. Now, this is a many to many field that actually allows us to access the supplier of a particular item. For us to be able to actually do this, I will explain how we created a model that stands between the item and the supplier. And this model is something, the one I call supplier item. Now, this supplier item is a model that actually links the item to the supplier. So as you can see, it has four fields. The first field is the item ID, which is a foreign key to the item that the supplier is giving. And then the second one is the supplier ID, which is a foreign key to the supplier table or the supplier model that I'm going to explain subsequently. And the third field there is the quantity. Now this quantity represent the total quantity that of that particular item that the supplier is giving to the business to be recorded into the inventory. And lastly, it has the supply date. Now, this supply date allows us to keep track of the day that the item was supplied. So finally, the last table here that I actually created is the supplier table. Now, the table or this model just gives us basic information about the supplier, like the name. In the business requirement, we are asked to like ensure that we get basic contact information about the supplier. So I felt like getting important information like the name of the supplier, email of the supplier, and the address of the supplier can allows us to like keep track of that particular stuff. So in summary, the relationship between this table is that one item can have many sub items, supplier items. So one item can be linked to different supplier, okay, and we can check how each supplier has given, which we are going to see when I'm showing the demo of the project. And then a supplier item or a sub can belong to one item. So multiple supplier can now have different item that's attached to it. Okay. Now again, I think I actually specify here that the quantity field in the item table is read-only field, like I explained previously, that reflects the sum of all associated supplier quantities that we have. So after listing out these major business requirements, building the table with all of this relationship, okay, the next thing was to actually start adding features and see if we can implement what we wanted to have. So to add the features, I actually created a repo. After creating a repository, I instantiate my entire code and stuff like that. So inside the Django project, um, I created two applications inside the Django project. And the reason why I created these two applications is because I wanted the application to be in a form of module, which is something that Django allows us to do very easily, so that we can easily decouple features, and it will not really affect other part of the application. Okay, so I added the inventory app and the supplier app. Now the inventory app will be exclusively responsible for everything that has to do with the inventory, apart from just keeping track of the supplier. While the supplier will be able to like keep track of every features of the application that has to do with the supplier. Now, like I said, what this allows us to do is that it allows us to build a modular applications or a microservice application that we can decouple features, we can unplug features, and it will not cause adverse effects on the entire application. Okay, so after doing this, I started adding features, writing serializers, and stuff like that. So now let me actually demonstrate how these um, applications work. Now to do this, I'm going to use Postman, which allows us to actually um, test our API very fast. So I created a Postman collection for this application, and so to just make it very easy, I gave the name of the application as collection stock flow collection. So the first thing we want to do is to either create a supplier or create an item. Okay, so either of that it will still work. So the first thing I'm going to do here is to create an item. So this is the request for that, the add item. Now this add item will go to this particular URL, this link, or this route rather, or this endpoint, which you can see, or which is available at the Swagger documentation that I will mention towards the end of this video. So to create an item, you add the name of the item, you add the description of the item, you add the price. Now the supplier data here is completely optional. The supplier data is the information about the supplier or the suppliers of that particular item. But you can actually create an item without actually adding a supplier, and then subsequently you will now update that particular field. And that is what we are going to do right now. So we are going to create an item. The name of the item is going to be cheese. We are going to call this cheese. And then the description will be I love cheese. I love cheese. And the price will be, let's keep the price at $100. Okay, So let's try to create this. So this is the information that will be sent to this particular place to create. As you can see, I want you to pay attention to this point that we have not added the information of the supplier yet. So we can send this now. And now we'll get a response back with the ID of the item and other description. Now, as you can see down here, the supplier sections, which allows us to get the identity of the supplier, is actually an empty array for now. Okay, so I'm assuming at this particular point we don't have a supplier in our system. So the next thing we want to do now is to create a supplier. So we'll go here. So we'll go to the create supplier. So which I've already configured this particular point to be looking at the actual or the proper route. So I'm going to call this cheese supplier. Cheese supplier. So that is the name of our supplier, and their email address is cheese.com, and their address is Cheese Avenue. So sorry, Cheese Avenue. So this is the information of that particular supplier, which actually reflects what is available in our business requirement. So I'm going to actually create this now. So now we've actually created this supplier and it has an ID of 5. Also, as you can see, we have a field there inside this return statement which specify the item. Now this field is going to hold an array of all the items that this particular supplier have actually given, right? Good. So now let's go and add the details of this particular supplier to the item that we added previously. So to do that, we can go back here to the add item. We can go back to the add item, and I want to copy this information now. I want to copy this information. So I want to copy this because this is important. Or let's just, so this is the information. No, this is not it. Okay, so this is the details of the item we just created. So first of all, let's get that particular item we just created now. So the ID of that item was what again? The ID of that particular item that we just added was 17. So let's get it. So this particular route allows us to get a specific item. So if I go here and replace 16 with 17, so if I call this route, it should return back the information of that particular item back to us. So this is the information of that particular item. Okay. So now what I want to do is to update that particular item. Okay. What I want to do now is to update it. Now I'm going to replace all these parts. So I'm going to replace that with the information of that particular item that we created. Now I'm also going to replace the route here with 17 so that we should be able to like target that particular item. Now, if you remember, when we created our supplier here, the ID of our supplier was 5. Okay, so that is very important during update. Now, when we take that information, when we're updating this information, we can actually add supplier data here. So add supplier. Okay. So now this supplier data actually contain an array of each suppliers that have actually supplied this particular item. So the first array should contain the array of a supplier. The second one should also contain an array of any supplier. So you can add as many information of suppliers here as possible. Okay, you can add as many information of suppliers here as possible. So because we are just trying to target one supplier, I'm going to remove this second array. So I'm going to remove that array, and then I'm going to replace this supplier ID with 5, which is the ID of the supplier that we just created. And then I'm going to add the quantity. So the quantity now will be the quantity of the item that the supplier actually gave to us. Now, as you can see, there was no quantity here before. So again, I'm going to change another information so that you will just see how this is updated. So I'm going to make this to be 500. So I'm going to make this to be 500 now. So we've changed the price. We've also added a supplier information to our particular item that we just created. Okay, so let's try to read this now. So okay, I think I made a little mistake. It's not supplier date, it's supplier data. So it's supplier data here. So I'm going to do this again. Oh, another mistake here. Supplier, not supplier. Okay, please forgive me for that. So we're going to try this one more time. Okay, as you can see, we've actually updated, and this is the response we got now. So we got back all the information we updated. We also got our quantity. Initially our quantity was 0, and we got our quantity to be 3, and then we got the supplier information, which actually shows the ID of that particular supplier, right? So what I want to do again now is to add one more supplier information so that you see how this works. So I'm going to copy this down. Then paste this, and then I'm going to change the supplier information to 3. So I'm changing the supplier information to 3. Then I'll try to update this again. So as you can see now, we have the first supplier, which is an ID of 5, supply 300 quantity of cheese. The second one also supplied 300 quantity of cheese, which allows us to get the total quantity of cheese to be 600, and then the ID of the suppliers which is available here. Okay, now if we go back to the supplier information, now we can now query this supplier and see all the information that this supplier has. So the supplier information, again, remember it was 5. So if I query this particular endpoint with that 5 endpoint, you can now see that the list item here now have the array, the dictionary of the item that this particular supplier has actually given. Okay, so as you can see, the contact information, and we have the quantity, the specific item that this person has given. So if this person also supply another item, it will also appear in this particular place, right? Okay, so that makes sense now. Now let's also query for the third person who also supplied cheese. The ID was 3, I assume. So if you do this now, you can also see it appears for this particular person, right? Also appears for this particular person. Let's be very sure. So let me go back here to the update, and okay, good, that was 3 and 5. That was the ID of the suppliers. So once more, I can also show you again. So I'm going to replace this now with 5. Let me replace that with 5 now. So you can see ID is actually showing here. Now the next thing we want to do is to update the supplier information. So let's update a supplier information. So, but first of all, what is the information of that supplier we just created? So we created this supplier. Here. So this is the information of the supplier we created. So I'm going to copy this, and we are going to try to update that particular supplier. We are going to update it. I'm going to replace it with this. So I want to change the email to help@cheese.com. So instead of contact. So I'll try to update this now. Sorry. So please, I'm supposed to change this ID to be 5. Unfortunately, I've already used that information to update another item, which is 2. So this also give me another opportunity to demonstrate another robustness of this application. So because I've already used this information to update an item which is 2, now if I try to use the same information to update another item which is 5, you're going to see a response that the email has already been used. So a supplier with this email already exists. That is because we've already used this to actually update an item or a supplier with an ID of 3. So that shows that we cannot reuse information in our system multiple times. So finally, I'm going to try to delete this particular supplier. So I'm going to represent 5 here, replace the ID with 5, and then I'm going to query this endpoint with the delete request. So this should be completely deleted and return us a 204 error code, which means that the content does not exist. Now we can get all suppliers that are also available in our system here. You can get all suppliers that are available. If you query this endpoint now, it should return all the suppliers that are available for us. Okay, so it will return all the suppliers with all the items. So for this particular supplier with an ID of 1, you can see an array, a list containing an array of the items the person has actually supplied, which is the same for almost all of them. Then we can also get all items, which will return a list of all the items that are available in our system. So if we call this endpoint 2, we should see the list of all the items that are available for us. Okay, so this also returns an array of all the items that are available for us. So each of these items has a supplier. That is, if somebody has actually supplied for them. So if nobody has actually supplied anything yet, you can see the quantity is 0 and the supplier array is empty. Okay, so that is how it will be for each of them. For any item that actually received a supply, you will see the total, the array or the list, yes, of the suppliers and the quantity that is there and the total price of each of these items. So that is exactly how this particular item works. Very fast, I want to show you one last thing. So I'm going to show you how you can actually follow up with this documentation and see this documentation properly. So our project is actually being run at this route at my own local host. So I'm going to take that and open it up. So I'm going to open it up here. So I'm going to open it up here. So this is the routes. You can see all the routes here. Now, one of the things you want to do is to go to either the Swagger or the Dog. So you can go to the Swagger here, which is an easy way for you to actually interact with, send requests to this particular API. So Swagger. So this is the Swagger. So you can actually just send requests. Currently, we do not have any authentication enabled in this project, so you can actually send any request into this particular place. So another one is the doc, which is a very cool documentation that is available. So you can also actually go through here and then you see all the documentation and actually how to do all of this. This is very simple to create because of Swagger API that is available in OpenAI rather, that is available for configurations on Django. So that is a brief summary of how this application works. If there is any question, if there is any place I can add improvement, I'll be very excited to hear from you. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to actually do this. I look forward to hearing back from you for your suggestion on improvement and how to move forward. Thank you very much. My name is Samuel once again.